singing to forget hunger in a cabin without electricity? How did a poor girl from the hills of Appalachia go on to build a $650 million empire and touch hearts all over the world? Dolly Parton is more than the voice behind Jolene and 9 to 5. She is a living symbol of America, a country music legend who carried gospel melodies from the valleys of Tennessee to the world's biggest stages. With her signature blonde hair, sparkling sequin dresses, and a smile as bright as the spotlight itself, Dolly always walked on stage like a star. But the brighter she shined, the more critics came calling. For decades, she's faced relentless scrutiny over her appearance labeled fake, accused of going too far with her figure, and branded the queen of plastic surgery. But Dolly never let the talk define her. Instead, she lives quietly in her Brentwood estate, runs the Dollywood theme park that welcomes millions each year, and keeps a garage full of vintage cars that remind her of the dirt road she once traveled. How does a woman who dared to be herself turn every stereotype into light? And what makes Dolly Parton, a woman once doubted, remain one of the most beloved figures in American culture for over half a century? Singing hymns to forget hunger, wearing dresses sewn from flour sacks, how did Dolly Parton build a $650 million empire? Born in 1946 in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, deep in the Appalachian Mountains, Dolly was the fourth of 12 children. She grew up in a one-room cabin with no electricity, no running water. The wind slipped through the wooden slats, and on freezing nights, the whole family would huddle together to keep warm. Her father, a tobacco farmer who couldn't read or write, worked from sunup to sundown. Her mother stitched clothes from feed sacks and sang hymns every night to lull her children to sleep. Just as many of us found comfort in church, Dolly found hope in those songs. They were like an oil lamp guiding her through the darkest days. From a young age, she made instruments out of whatever she could find. A wooden frame and some old steel wires became her first guitar. Sitting on the porch, looking out over the misty valley, she played unfinished melodies, singing to ease the hunger, to forget the cold, and to dream of a world beyond the ridgeline. One day, she found a broken pencil and scribbled her first song on the back of a worn-out feed sack, then hid it under her pillow, afraid her mother might scold her for daydreaming too much. But every stroke of that pencil was a path leading her forward. One night, her father sighed deeply because he couldn't read a letter from a relative. Dolly, just 8 years old, quietly took his hand and made a silent promise. One day, I'll do something that will make you proud. That seed of compassion would eventually bloom into the imagination library. Around the age of 10, Dolly was invited to sing on Cass Walker's local radio show. That morning, she wore her older brother's wool cap and rode into town, heart pounding. If my voice cracks, she thought, this dream might vanish like mountain fog. Inside the little studio, the microphone looked bigger than her head, the lights dim like a test of courage. Then she sang. Her voice was thin, but steady like sunlight piercing the dark. The room fell silent. When she finished, applause filled the space, drowning out the sound of her heartbeat. A few listeners murmured, "That little girl is something special." Those words were like firelight, warming the path she had barely begun to see. Even as she walked barefoot for miles to school in the freezing cold, Dolly carried a dream far bigger than poverty. Haven't we all, at some point, walked through hard times holding on to a dream like hers? She once said, "We didn't have money, but we had music, we had each other, and we had faith that things would get better." From those misty hills, with a guitar in her arms, she stepped forward, determined to climb beyond the mountains. But when she finally reached Nashville, the city of bright lights, would it welcome her in? With just a handful of songs and a burning dream, she arrived in Nashville, But when the city of stars turned its back, how did Dolly hold on to her faith? In 1964, fresh out of high school, 18-year-old Dolly Parton left the mountains of Tennessee with nothing but her music and a faith no one else could see. Nashville was dazzling, but distant. She lived in a cramped boarding house, surviving at times on leftover food from diners and hotel kitchens. On rainy nights, with water dripping through cracked windows, she'd write songs on scraps of paper by the dim light of an oil lamp, wondering if leaving the mountains had been a mistake. We've all faced days like that when the only thing lighting the path forward is faith. For Dolly, hope lived in the song she carried in her heart. She signed with Monument Records in 1965, but they pushed her to record pop instead of country. The singles failed. Her dream began to slip through her fingers. Only her Uncle Bill Owens believed in her. Together, they wrote songs, sending them out to radio stations. Some caught attention, but not enough to break through. The world saw a naive country girl. Dolly saw a queen in the making. The turning point came in 1967 when she was invited to duet with TV star Porter Wagoner. Overnight, she went from unknown to a weekly presence in millions of American homes. Her debut album, Hello, I'm Dolly, hit No. 11 on the Billboard Country chart. Her song, Dumb Blonde, rang out like an answer to every person who had underestimated her. Like so many of us, she found strength not in praise, but in pushing through rejection, believing light would come. But fame casts shadows. Wagoner saw her as a gem, but one to keep in a box. Every time she brought him a new song, he turned it down, quietly. Dolly kept writing in the dark, waiting for her freedom. One night, after another rejection, she sat under the moonlight and wrote, I will always love you through tears. It wasn't just a farewell to a musical partner, it was a promise to herself. The climax came when Elvis Presley asked to record that song, but only if he could own the publishing rights. Dolly sat for hours in her tiny apartment, heart heavy. Saying no to Elvis could mean saying goodbye to the biggest break of her life. But she refused because that song, she said, held her soul. We've all stood at that crossroads, choosing between what's right and what's easy. Dolly chose the road of conviction. In 1974, I Will Always Love You hit No. 1 on the country charts. Its melody floated across the Tennessee hills, like her voice shouting back to the world that once told her no 2 decades later. Whitney Houston turned the song into an anthem, earning Dolly over $10 million. She once joked, I made enough to buy Graceland. Around that same time, Dolly noticed a bank teller flirting with her husband, Carl. The fear of losing him became Jolene. She scribbled the lyrics on a dry cleaning bag, hands trembling with emotion. When she recorded it, she sang as if the whole world was listening. Jolene became a global hit, one that took her name far beyond Nashville. From a damp boarding house to the top of the charts, Dolly stepped out from every shadow cast her way. But after all the glory, did she ever find peace? From a one-room cabin without electricity to a grand estate, Dolly Parton's home tells the story of triumph. But for someone who's never forgotten where she came from, what does success really mean? Tucked away in Brentwood, Tennessee, where tall poplars cast long shadows across quiet roads, is a serene 3-story home nestled in nature. Dolly Parton and her husband, Carl Dean, purchased the property in 1999 for about $400,000. Today, it's estimated to be worth over $3.5 million, but for them, it's never been something measured in dollars. The house spans more than 300 square feet, with a private pool, tennis court, and a small chapel with a pointed roof tucked behind rose gardens that bloom year-round. But Dolly's favorite spot is the kitchen, where she still cooks breakfast for Carl each morning, turns on a small radio, and hums unfinished melodies. "We didn't even have a kitchen growing up," she once said. "I remember Mama kneeling at a makeshift wood stove, wind blowing through every crack in the wall. From there to here, it's a journey I've worked for with every breath. Every brick, every window pane is the result of sleepless nights writing songs and tour buses that rolled thousands of miles." She once joked, "I don't go to sleep, I just change locations to stay awake." And because of that, this home isn't just a place to live, it's the embodiment of sacrifice and dreams once thought out of reach. In that house, Dolly and Carl have lived quietly for over 50 years. No stage lights, no camera crews, just evenings spent together on the porch, retelling old stories, listening to the breeze, and laughing at life's little moments. Her siblings, nieces, nephews, and extended family often visit on weekends, bringing laughter, children's footsteps, and the smell of fresh-baked pies Dolly still loves to make by hand. At the back of the property stands a small chapel, her retreat for reflection. No grand bells, no ornate statues, just wooden benches, an old organ, and sunlight filtered through stained glass. "This is where I sit and thank God that I once knew hunger and cold, so I could understand what it means to be full," she said. From a drafty shack in the hills of Appalachia to a warm, rose-lined home in Tennessee, Dolly Parton has come full circle. And this place, quiet, bright, and deeply personal, is the clearest proof that dreams, when protected, never fade. Dolly doesn't own a fleet of million-dollar supercars or high-tech SUVs. Instead, she gravitates toward vehicles with soul-classic Americana. Much like her music and her style, sparkling, yet rooted in memory. In her Brentwood garage, the standout is a 1997 Cadillac d'Elegance Long. Pale cream exterior with deep burgundy velvet interior. Once a symbol of 90s elegance, it now holds collector value between $35,000 and $50,000. Dolly likes to drive it when visiting her hometown slow, smooth, and just right for letting the Tennessee wind toss her golden hair. "I've always liked the feeling that everything's moving a little slower," she once said. Parked beside it is a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, painted two-tone white and red, with chrome trim polished to mirror the maples outside her yard. Valued around $60,000 to $80,000, it's one of the most iconic vintage cars in the U.S. But Dolly didn't buy it to impress. She once used it in a classic music video and even wrote lyrics in it before heading into the studio. "Sometimes I like to sit in the car, turn the radio to an old AM station, and just remember where I started," she shared. Her garage isn't meant to show off, but every vehicle has a voice. One tells of a milestone, another remembers a dirt road from childhood, and when she turns the key, the engine doesn't just start, it sings a note in the symphony of a life well lived. Though she's known for big blonde hair, sparkling gowns, and a laugh that lights up a room, Dolly Parton's everyday life is surprisingly quiet. She rises early, sometimes 3 or 4 a.m., brews coffee, and writes music, longhand, no smartphone, no laptop. When she's not touring, she spends most of her time at home, cooking, arranging flowers, writing lyrics, and calling family. The small things give her peace, the kind fame could never buy. She also keeps a doll collection, some from childhood, others miniature versions of herself in puffed lace dresses and towering hair. For Dolly, it's not play, it's preserving every version of who she's been. Even in her simplicity, Dolly has never hidden her love for beauty. She still puts effort into the glamour that's become her signature. She once joked, "It takes a lot of money to look this cheap," and laughed like every criticism bounced off her red lipstick and unshakable confidence. For her, maintaining her look isn't about proving anything. It's her way of honoring herself radiant without being boastful, graceful without needing to explain. Amid millions of spotlights that have shone on Dolly Parton, there's one man who's rarely stepped into them yet has always stood behind them. Carl Dean, her husband since 1966, is the quiet presence in her extraordinary story. They met in Nashville, at a laundromat, just after she moved to the city chasing her dream. Carl, then running a paving company, had no connection to music. Dolly once joked, "He didn't care about showbiz, but he liked me." And that was enough. They married in a private ceremony. No press, no celebrity guests. Carl has rarely appeared publicly, not out of avoidance, but because they agreed their love belonged in the shadows, not the spotlight. Over 50 years later, they've kept that promise. Though they never had children, Dolly and Carl built a life full of family. She became godmother to Miley Cyrus, helps raise her nieces and nephews, and often hosts the younger ones on weekends. "I've got a whole bunch of kids, they just don't share my last name." She laughs. In 2016, to celebrate 50 years of marriage, they renewed their vows with a white dress, wedding photos, and lots of laughter. Still, no television crews. "We didn't need the world to see it. We just wanted the world to know we still love each other," she said. In a life televised for over 6 decades, Dolly's love story is the one part she's chosen to keep off screen, like a song meant only for her. When the stage lights shine their brightest, the deepest wounds are often the easiest to overlook. For Dolly Parton, the spotlight never came without a shadow. Beneath the sequined dresses and that radiant smile, there are things Dolly could never quite sing out loud. She once dreamed of having children of a home filled with little voices, but endometriosis forced her into surgery, and with it, the painful acceptance that she would never be a mother. The girl who helped raise 11 siblings, who longed to make up for the childhood she barely had to learn to love in a different way. "I didn't have children," she once said, "but I think God meant for me to give birth to other things." And so she did, becoming Miley Cyrus's godmother and sending millions of books to children across the country through her imagination library. Then came the public scrutiny. She's been open about her cosmetic procedures, breast augmentations, fillers, facelifts. Critics called her fake, said she'd gone too far, but Dolly never hid. She simply smiled and said, "It cost a lot of money to look this cheap." With that, she turned mockery into armor. Humor became her shield. For years, rumors of infidelity followed her, fueled by her flirtatious style, sultry lyrics, and the quiet presence of her husband, Carl Dean. Some said she was lonely. Others said Carl wasn't real. But in every interview, Dolly only ever said softly, "Carl is home. No matter where I go, that's where I come back to." In 2016, they celebrated 50 years of marriage with a simple vow renewal: no press, no spectacle, just laughter and love, just like it had always been. The turning point came in 2004 when Dolly was involved in a car accident near her home in Tennessee. It wasn't serious, but serious enough to leave her shaken, lying on the pavement, suddenly aware of her own fragility. Months later, she admitted, "For the first time, I thought maybe I've pushed too far," but she got up. She kept singing. She kept being the light for everyone else, even when she wasn't quite whole inside. Dolly's strength doesn't lie in never falling, it lies in her refusal to stay down. From the critiques about her looks, to the private heartbreak of not becoming a mother, to the moments where she had to laugh through real pain, Dolly Parton never let any storm dim her glittering heart. And perhaps it's from those very storms that a true legacy began to take shape. A woman can do it all, but what remains when the spotlight fades for Dolly Parton? Her legacy isn't measured in applause, but in the lives that have been changed because she lived. With over 3,000 songs written, more than 100 million albums sold, 11 Grammy Awards, dozens of numbered one hits, and a timeless anthem like I Will Always Love You, sung across 3 generations. Dolly Parton is more than a country music icon. She is a living chapter in the history of American music. But what made her name transcend Nashville, beyond the charts and radio airplay, came from something else entirely giving. In 1995, she founded the Imagination Library, inspired by her father who couldn't read. What began as a small project in Tennessee has now given away over 150 million free books to children across the U.S. In 2016, after devastating wildfires swept through her hometown, she donated more than $12 million through the My People Fund to help nearly 900 families rebuild their lives. In 2020, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, Dolly gave $1 million to vaccine research at Vanderbilt University funding that helped lead to the development of the Moderna vaccine. She didn't seek headlines. She didn't make a show of it, but each quiet act did something that no hit song ever could change the world, little by little. Culturally, she helped bring country music beyond the southern states, placing it on global stages and inspiring generations of artists, including her goddaughter, Miley Cyrus. In 2024, she made a powerful return with her Rockstar Deluxe album at nearly 80 years old, and in 2026, Broadway will open Hello. I'm Dolly, a musical retelling of the life she wrote with her own hands and heart. The crescendo came at the end of 2024 when the U.S. State Department honored her with the Peace Through Music Award for using music to bring people together, to ease division, and offer comfort. At the ceremony, there was no long speech. She stepped onto the stage in a simple white dress and said quietly, "I was just a little girl singing in a cabin. I'm still singing, and I hope that song makes someone feel a little warmer inside." From poverty to legend, from the spotlight to a quiet kitchen in Brentwood, Dolly Parton leaves behind something far greater than fame, a kinder world because she was in it. Dolly Parton isn't just a voice, she's proof that even from the humblest cabin, you can reach the world if your heart is big enough and your love runs deep. Have you ever known someone like that in your life? Share their story in the comments below. And if this journey moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories of extraordinary lives lived with purpose.